Hello, everyone, and welcome to our podcast, Protection Denied, a podcast that highlights Palestinian rights and shed lights on the issue of displaced populations in the West Bank specifically. In this episode, the first episode of our podcast, we're sitting down with Mr. Shawki Al-Ayasa, a legal expert who's going to insight us with information about displaced populations in the lens of international law. We're going to go through definitions, gaps between international law on paper and practices. Today we sit down with Mr. Shawki Al-Ayasa, a legal expert who's going to enlighten us with information about forced displacement in the lens of international law. We will be highlighting the legal definitions, the responsibility on the occupying powers, as well as the protection afforded to displaced populations. We will also discuss the gaps between law and practice and the urgent need for accountability. Join us in an insightful episode and talk. Join us for an insightful conversation that bridges legal analysis with real life practices. Hello, Mr. Shawki.
Thank you.
We're so happy to have you among us here,
Thank you very much.
and it's a pleasure to have you, of course. Well, to begin with, we will ask you first to explain how international law defines forced displacement.
Well, I think we have to see the whole picture first in order to understand, because the definition itself doesn't mean much. The international law defines IDPs as people who were displaced inside their own country. And this is the difference between them and the refugees who fled the country or go to other countries. So this is the narrow definition of IDPs. But in general, what's happening in Palestine is different than any other country. We don't have civil war here. We don't have military disputes between different groups or ideologies. We have a colonization. We have a foreign occupation occupying Palestine and causes all these problems and committing all these crimes. To understand it, we have to first say that the Zionist movement who established Israel all the time wanted to occupy all Palestine and wanted to control all Palestine. In order to do so, they have two crimes to commit: genocide and ethnic cleansing. Without genocide and ethnic cleansing, they can't get rid of us Palestinians and control all Palestine. So everything they do fits in these goals. Now, the Palestinian refugees are different than others in international law because when it happened, during the Nakba, the United Nations thought that this is a special case. It's not like any other continent or countries where they have migrants or immigrants or refugees. This why they didn't put Palestinian refugees under the Commission for Refugees. They established a unique one organization specifically for Palestinian refugees, which is called UNRWA. So we don't fit under any other agency of the United Nations. Now, what's happening now in the north of West Bank, these people, specifically in Jenin and Tulkarem, are originally refugees from 48. So they are already refugees living in refugee camps. And Israel now wants to cancel the UNRWA. This is their big title, that they want to get rid of UNRWA. And in order to do that, they have different plans and different categories of actions. One of them is to remove the camps, get rid of the camps. They started in Jenin, Nur Shams, Tulkarem, and there was no reason for them to remove the population outside of the camps. But because they meant ethnic cleansing, as we said before, they did that. And not only they moved them outside of the camp, they destroyed their homes so they can't go back. Now, according to international law, the international law doesn't have strong power to implement its regulations. It's like you can see in the world the powerful countries like United States and Israel, they don't respect international law. They never did. It's made for the weaker sides to protect them, but it failed to do so all the time, and especially in the last 2 years in Gaza, to the level that a few days ago, 2 years ago, 2 days ago, I think, an expert in international law at the EU said the international law committed suicide in Gaza in the last 2 years because we don't see how it works, Palestinians specifically. So now, in the north of West Bank, Jenin Tul Karam, these people, IDPs called in international law, meaning they were displaced inside their own country. But here it's important to remind listeners that we have a foreign occupation. It's not one country ruled by its own people. It's occupied. So this makes it different than other countries like what happened in Syria or Iraq or other areas. Now they have rights in the international humanitarian law, international human rights law. We have Geneva Conventions and its protocols. We have covenants from 1966 for political rights, economic rights, cultural rights. All these are written in international law. But of course, as we experienced for the last century, Israel never respected this and never implemented it. These laws, if you go deep in the articles, it gives protections to civilians, Fourth Geneva Convention specifically and its protocols. And there are also the guiding principles for the IDPs from 1998. So the first thing is the right to return. This, in the international law, they consider it before any other solution, the right of return. While it's not implemented yet, there are other rights: housing, dignity, freedom of movement, allowing all the international agencies, Red Cross, OCHA, other agencies, international NGOs, local NGOs, to provide services to these people while they are displaced. All this is protected by law, but when you don't have power to protect yourself or protect the law itself, it never implemented. And this is what's happening now.
So, from what I understand from what you said, that there is actually responsibility that relies on the occupying power, in this sense, the Israeli colonial regime, but the colonial regime is not respecting the international law.
Of course, especially the Fourth Geneva Convention. It was made for the areas occupied by foreign country. And in this convention, there are a lot of protection articles to protect the civilians in these areas. Israel is part of it. They signed it. But they refuse to implement it because they refuse to call Palestine occupied territory. So they don't implement it. And according to law, to the Geneva Convention itself, every country in the world signed and became member of this convention has responsibility, according to the first article of it, to make sure that this convention implemented everywhere. But of course, nobody did anything, and Israel keep escaping from its responsibility. There are a lot of responsibilities on Israel in general, occupying Palestine and dealing with civilians, and in this specific case of the north of West Bank, the IDPs, because it's the responsibility of the government to take care of them. In other cases, in other countries, let's say in Sudan or Syria, the government of that country is responsible for the IDPs. But here in Palestine, we don't have that. The Palestinian Authority is not an independent country to be responsible to provide services. Well, they try, but they can't because they don't have the power, they don't have the authority. Israel is above everybody, and it make incursions to all the cities all the time. So they prevent even who wants to help the ITPs. And we see lately, especially in the last 2 years, how they put obstacles all the time in front of the NGOs, international NGOs, who try to help in Gaza or West Bank. So the only way, now it's clear, the only way to provide services to protect these people and help them is to put sanctions on Israel. We tried everything with Israel, never respected anything. The only way now is to impose sanctions against the Israeli government.
And this will be done through.
The United Nations, the EU, every country individually can impose sanctions, but nobody does because, again, it's the power balance
Yes.
and the interest balance of the countries.
Yes. I unfortunately this is the truth, and honestly, in the last 2 years, I think Palestinians have lost faith in international law. It let us down a little bit, and but we still also try as much as possible to stick with international law as the only gate into making or putting the Israeli colonial regime accountable for the genocide that is happening, the aggression that is still continuous, and the ongoing Nakba that we're facing as Palestinians for decades, for more than 7 decades now.
Yes, you are right. Although we see it doesn't work, but still it's an instrument for our
Exactly.
people to use.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
the only instrument. It's the only, let's say, even though it's a bit cliche, it's the only light at the end of the tunnel for us as Palestinians. You mentioned before, Mr. Shawki, about the issue of the displaced populations in Jenin and Tul Karam and Nur Shams as well, and these are refugee camps. And you said that they are already refugees. Their ancestors were uprooted from their original villages back in 1948. So in the lens of international law, how would these people be identified if they're being refuged or displaced twice in the same country?
Well, I think the right and the correct thing is to say it's ethnic cleansing crime against them. Because both definitions apply to them. They are refugees and they are ITPs and they are forcibly displaced and they are victims of ethnic cleansing crime done by Israel. So all this applied to them, and there are there are articles in the international law to protect them and protect their rights, but not implemented, unfortunately.
Okay. So if we're talking about accountability for the Israeli colonial regime, you highlighted a bit about the possibilities and the actions that might be taken by the United Nations, some foreign countries as well. But are there specific mechanisms, in your opinion, that should be taken?
Look, we have to look at other examples. South Africa, for example. Because the Israeli occupation Palestine, it's similar to what happened in South Africa and United States and Australia, where the white Europeans come and conquer and occupy the country and prosecute the local indigenous population and impose an apartheid regime. So if we take South African example, how they liberated themselves from this, with help of international world, international people in Europe and other countries, by boycott and sanctions. This what worked very well for South Africa. Boycotted all South Africans' trade and everything and diplomatic relations, and then imposed sanctions on them. And this how South Africa become not apartheid. So now with Israel, as I said, we tried everything, but unfortunately, don't get help from what they call themselves civilized countries, like in Europe or the United States. The opposite, they are supporting and helping Israel to prosecute us and to commit the crimes, including genocide and ethnic cleansing. And while there are movements now from the people in these countries, the Western countries, who support Palestine, because the crimes became beyond imaginations. So we saw a massive demonstrations all over the world. We hope that this will help. We hope that these people will force their own countries to change their policies and respect international law.
So we have faith in people, not
Yes,
in
of course.
governments.
Never in governments.
Never in governments. Unfortunately, these nations that call themselves civilized, between parentheses, are those who actually wrote international law and still not respect what they actually wrote. So I personally believe that it's basically white ink. It's filled with white supremacy. It applies on some nations and does not apply on those who are actually oppressed.
Everything connected. You are right. They wrote the international law, and they are the ones who break it all the time and violate all its articles. And now we have example to compare between Gaza and Ukraine. We could see what they said to the Ukrainians, but they don't do for what they call the third world countries. Racism, apartheid,
Yes.
supremacy. All this can apply to the European governments and others, United States, Canada, Australia, whoever. They all stood with Israel and supported their crimes continuously. So, but as we said before, what we can do? International law is something the weak can use to protect themselves. It's true that they always violate it, and now even the International Court in The Hague is under sanctions by the US government because they tried to implement the international law. So we don't have a choice but to have hope and keep going and try to connect with international organizations, with good people in Europe and other and elsewhere who have humanity in themselves, who have morals, and they can't accept what their government's doing, helping Israel in committing their crimes against Palestinians. This hope is becoming bigger in the last 2 years, and we as Palestinians have to coordinate with these activists and try to make joint actions with them and to tell them what's the priorities. Like, for example, now in Jenin or Tulkarm, what's the priority? Of course, they have a right to go back to their homes, first in the camps and then to original villages. But while they are not allowed to go back, there are things to do. They need housing, they need humanitarian aid, and we ask everyone to help international organizations and local NGOs to provide this service, humanitarian service to these people.
And this, if I understand correctly, should rely on the occupying power. This is the occupying power responsibility because they caused displacement.
They are the only responsible.
Exactly.
They caused it, and they are the responsible government
Exactly.
who control the area. So they are the only one responsible for this.
And they're not taking full responsibility.
No.
So what practices should we actually do for... I know my question might seem a little bit silly, and it's very ironic to hear that an international court is being sanctioned by a country.
Yeah.
It's very ironic, and it makes us lose more faith in international law, unfortunately. But there's something that should be done, actually, to protect those who are displaced, especially here in the West Bank with... You know, there's not as much media coverage to the aggression that is happening for more than 2 years now. So what are the practices that should be done?
Well, you mentioned the media. This is the responsibility of the media. I don't have faith in Western media. They have their own agendas, but the Palestinian and Arabic media must give more attention to this problem. They don't, and also because of Gaza. We know that in the last 2 years, everybody concentrating on Gaza, and they are right, of course, in Gaza there is genocide. But in the same time, we have problems everywhere in the occupied Palestine. Not only in the north, also in the south, in Yatta and Masafir Yatta
Yes.
and El Khair and in Jericho and the surrounding areas, everywhere, and all have rights to work for them and cover their problems. And this also responsibility of the local NGOs to keep their work and continue their work and intensify their work, and also make their voice heard abroad by using other languages than Arabic to highlight the problems of these people, and specifically to show the priorities, because people who want to support us abroad, they won't know what's the priority today or tomorrow or this week. This is the responsibility of the local NGOs and the local media. They are doing work. I believe they are doing work, and we see it, and part of it what you do. So, but it needs more planning and more connections with solidarity groups in Europe specifically, or Arab countries even, to guide them where to concentrate in these days.
So we highlighted the role of media, local media, Palestinian media, let's say, and international organizations and local organizations and grassroots as well. So you believe in the value of documentation. So we're talking both legal documentation and media coverage and media documentation. Who do you think is better? Do we go to media documentation or legal, or do they work together?
Both are important. Legal documentation is very, very important, specifically in the issues we are discussing now, because these crimes don't expire like other crimes. You can prosecute the criminals like after 100 years, like what happened in the Second War with Hitler and others, war criminals. War crimes and crimes against humanity, you have to document it carefully. And we do, Palestinians do that, and we have a lot of work. And it's important to continue, and it's important now to document what's happening in these three camps in the north and in the village in the south and near around Jericho. Also, the media. Of course, it's different. The legal documentation requirements different than the media coverage, but also the media is important to highlight the daily life of these people and what they need, and to hold Red Cross, OCHA, UN, others responsible, and keep pressuring them through the media to do their work. Even Israel put all the obstacles against them. This will make a lot of pressure on the United Nations and the member states to do their responsibilities at the UN. They never did anything against Israel. It should be out of the UN if it was any other country, but because of the protection of the US, United States specifically, they protect them in this. But we have to continue this work. Now, the legal documentation, I believe there are many Palestinian NGOs are doing it, and they were successful to pass it to the ICC in The Hague, and this is why we had some results.
So both work together,
Of course.
hand to hand. So if we're talking current time, and maybe I mentioned something about the north of the West Bank, and you also mentioned, well, thank to you, the issue in the south area of the West Bank, such as Masafir Yatta. So if this displacement continues, what do you think are the risks, or the biggest legal and humanitarian risks, let's say?
Well, as we said, it's ethnic cleansing. So this is the danger, that the aim of Israel is to get rid of Palestinians. They want all Palestine without Palestinians. So everything they do to pressure people to leave the country. In Gaza, in West Bank, in the refugee camps, everywhere. So that's their aim. So we have to face it. We have to help people to stay in the country. That's, I think, the main goal for Palestinian politicians and political parties and political agenda, is how to help Palestinians to stay inside Palestine. This is like a major goal, I believe, in my belief, for Palestinian people. So how to do that? To help people in their daily life, to cover their needs, because we know these people are poor. They don't have any resources to cover their daily needs and daily life. This is the responsibility of the Palestinian Authority, the PLO, the Palestinian parties, the NGOs. In the same time, it's responsibility of Arab countries, Arab organizations, and Western world, who is responsible for the crime. So their people are responsible to provide this help. So everything works together. It's a circle to support the Palestinians to stay in their country. This is the way to prevent the implementation of Israeli goals with their crimes of ethnic cleansing and genocide.
So you support the idea of existence is actually part of resistance, of the Palestinian resistance.
It's a main thing.
Exactly, and basically it's all a circle around resilience and the Palestinian sumud. If we use that
We've been doing
word.
this
Yes.
for 100 years, and we were successful, and we'll continue.
So at the end, I want your personal reflection, let's say, for our listeners to support understand the issue a little bit better. So a quick summary about the issue.
Well, what I would like listeners to understand, that this is not isolated problem, not isolated crime. It's part of the strategy of Israel, part of the strategy of the Zionist movement around the world. So we have to understand it as such in order to prevent it from happening. We as Palestinians are doing our part to stay in the country, to resist, and the responsibility of solidarity groups outside is to support us politically first and legally second, and the humanitarian aid. This all goes together, but the political support is very important to finish the problem from its roots in the occupation. Without ending the occupation, it's a circle. It will never end. They will keep committing their crimes, and we'll keep resistant. We will not give up. But to solve the problem, let's say, if we can call it a problem, the international community have to pressure Israel politically through sanctions, have to hold Israel accountable and responsible through legal systems, not only international law, also there is something called universal jurisdiction in some countries, especially in Europe. We can use that, or they even, the solidarity groups there, can use that, or Palestinians who hold the citizenship of these countries, they can use the universal jurisdictions. We tried several times, some of it worked. And also the humanitarian side. There are many humanitarian NGOs and Red Cross who it's their responsibility to provide the humanitarian aid for these people. They need, first of all, housing, and then they need to cover their daily needs. All this works together.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Shawki, for this insightful conversation. It was a pleasure having you as the first guest of
Thank
our
you for doing
podcast.
this. This is a great work. Thank you.
It's part of your recommendations,
Yes.
actually, to document, to talk, to highlight the issues and the oppression that our people are living now and have been living for decades now. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Thank you to our listeners for seeing and watching this episode. We will see you again in our podcast, Protection Denied. Thank you.